Without further ado, we are going to bring in a lovely, lovely lady who is running to be the next congressional representative of our nation's capital. And without further ado, let's welcome in Reverend Wendy Hamilton.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, good. How are you?
You look like you're ready to take us to church, so let's do it, baby.
Let's get it, all right? Let me get the offering plate first. You know, that's how we work. Let's circulate the offering plate and then we can talk. But how are you doing?
We're good. So talk a little bit about your background, where, how you got into this race. I guess what people want to know is your why, but, just talk a little bit about yourself for a bit, and then we'll talk about the district.
Great. Well, I can just say, for those who may not know who I am, Reverend Wendy Hamilton, RevWendyForCongress.com to get all of that information. But I'm a mother, I'm a minister, I'm an educator, and a social justice advocate. And so for me, politics and ministry actually cross paths when you start talking about looking out for the poor and the oppressed and the widow. And I could go into different scriptures about that. But for me, public service is ministry. And so while I do work, I'm a former pastor, unfortunately, our church, due to the pandemic, like many churches, ultimately made the decision to close. And so I'm still in touch and still actively attending Zoom meetings. But I was actually at that time, before the pandemic actually started to take off, I was pastoring a small church here in rural Maryland, which is right outside of the District of Columbia. But I've always been involved in politics. I've always volunteered. I've phone banked. I've helped out. You can't live in the District of Columbia and not pay attention to politics, right? You can't even stand in Starbucks and have a conversation and not know what was the latest bill that's being held up by Manchin in the Senate. But anyway, I'm sorry, I digress. For me, it was always a natural inclination to be involved and to keep up. So I started volunteering a little bit, even around the Obama administration. I did some phone banking. That's about the extent that I had gotten involved in that, to that level, until Andrew Yang came along. And Andrew Yang, I read about him in 2018, February 2018, very early on. He had just filed, and he was presenting this idea of universal basic income, which I had not heard about until that time. And the way in which he was presenting it then was the threat of automation and how many jobs were going to be, and were already being automated away, and what we were facing in the future, and how we needed to provide a lifeline for folks. Well, that resonated with me, because I remembered my grandparents, working in factories growing up that got automated away their jobs or got shipped overseas, and they had nothing to fall back on. You can't ask my grandfather to leave the assembly line and go code, right? So that resonated with me. I reached out to the campaign and got a chance to ultimately join the staff as a spiritual and cultural outreach director. But when you're on a campaign, now you get to see how the sausage is made. Now you're behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And it's not always pretty, but I have to say that sparked in me something you all were alluding to early on, that running for office has to be something deeper than just advancing yourself. It has to be about something larger than you just wanting to become known or gain clout. And so for me, this push for universal basic income, for progressive policies that made a tangible difference in people's lives, that signed me up for those. And we definitely need those in the District of Columbia. And so it just made sense over the summer, as I watched our democracy being tampered with, and we did not know, that's to say it lightly, and we did not know what the outcome of the election was going to be in November. I thought to myself, I cannot stand idly by. And
so talk a little bit about your current representative, and why you feel that, or why it's probably obvious that it's somebody who is not really working for the people, or is no longer working for the people, and where you see the deficiencies, especially regarding DC, what your priorities would be for that.
My priorities are really, for me, to present myself as an authentic representative of the voices of the people. The incumbent has been in the office for 30 years. And there comes a time in my mind where we need to step aside and allow the future to take place. Progress is inevitable. And what I was seeing and what I was hearing, and still am hearing on the ground, is people don't feel like they're being authentically represented. They're not feeling like they're being heard. They're not feeling like the representatives are presenting themselves in a way to be held accountable for not doing what they've been put in office to do.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
and so for me, it was more about, while I say in some regard, I'm not running against Eleanor Holmes Norton, I'm running for DC. But yes, I am. I mean, right. Eleanor is the incumbent. And so in theory, yes, I am running against her. I am running to be the next representative, and preferably a voting one once we get statehood rights. But at the same time, I am running for the people of DC, to be the authentic voice, to have representation on the Hill that looks like, sounds like, and feels like the residents of the District of Columbia.
We're speaking with Reverend Hamilton, who is running for Congress to represent our nation's capital. Reverend, I think one of the things that's probably one of the most obvious things when it comes to DC is obviously housing. It is amazing just from the last time that Jen and I were in DC. I mean, the homeless encampments are everywhere. You literally can't turn a corner.
Yeah.
It got to the point where it was so clear that it was starting to get to the elites that Wolf Blitzer felt the need to say something to Speaker Pelosi about it. She didn't think very highly of him doing that, but it's almost like, yeah, when it's in your face, it's like there's no way you can avoid
it's the
talking about
irony,
this issue.
Right.
Isn't it that's our nation's capital? I mean, it's really...
Well, all too often, it's like if you are not on the outskirts of DC, basically North DC, which is, one of the tougher areas, versus like, let's say living in Georgetown, you pretend like it doesn't exist, or you just don't see it. And once you do see it, you can't unsee it.
Well, that's what I'm talking about, the genuine, authentic voice of DC, because folks, you have to come across Pennsylvania Avenue. You have to come off of Constitution Avenue and come into, you said North DC, maybe Northwest DC, come up east of the river, come over here to Southeast DC where I live, over in Ward 7 and Ward 8.
That's where Max lives. We were there. We actually have somebody, we were at somebody's house that actually lives there, and you hear just gunshots.
So how can I represent you when I won't even come talk to you? When I don't even have the fullness of the experience that's happening with you right now. So, part of that is the minister in me, right? We sit and we have presence, we talk with people, we validate their feelings. And so for me, that skill set sort of translates over into representation, because some people said to me, well, Reverend Wendy, we like what you have to say. Why run for Congress? Why not do city council? Why not do mayor? Why not start? And I said, because you have to go where you believe your gifts and your strengths are. Administrator, I'm not an administrator. I'm not going to be able to keep the police chief and the mayor from fighting, and the police chief from fighting each other to me. That's not my strength. But if you want me to advocate, if you want me to write policy, if you want me to author bills, if you want to represent the masses from an authentic place, that's where my skill set lends best. And so that's why I felt it was time to run for Congress. And also, I don't need permission to do that. And Jen,
you know what? No, you don't. And I say that because I know firsthand, when you tell people that you're running against their incumbent, that they look at you. I actually have people like, that's Debbie's seat. And I'm like, no, actually it belongs to the people of District 23, but her ass has been sitting in it so long, I could see why you think it's hers.
Well, therein lies though, Jen, because I got the same thing,
Yeah.
I said, that's the people's seat.
Yeah.
But that's exactly what you say.
That's I mean, we said the exact same thing, because people said, well, is she retiring? Is Eleanor retiring? I was like, if you all retire her, that's not an appointed seat. That's an elected seat.
But they sit there like it's a fiefdom and it's a monarchy. And then our district in particular is bad like that.
And because you're running, basically on the humanity forward premise, that this is much worse on the Democratic side than it is on the Republican side.
Oh my gosh.
There is this notion, and I think it probably has more to do with the fact that particularly right now in the Democratic Party versus the Republican Party, there's a lot of older representatives.
That's putting it mildly.
And the district that, is just to the north that borders is Steny Hoyer's district. And he is somebody who has been there forever. There is this idea that...
Shout out Michaela Wilkes.
Yeah, Michaela Wilkes. Gotta love that girl.
5, Maryland.
Yeah, for real. And there's this idea that you're not, and maybe this is something you could speak more to, because I do think this is something we do see very often in the Black community, where it's an unwritten rule. You are not supposed to challenge incumbents of your own. It's like it's an unwritten rule.
It is.
If you do it, you're considered persona non grata, basically.
And they really believe, and not only that, but a lot of these people that sit in these seats, they truly believe that they are the person who is entitled to decide who to bequeath their seat to.
Well, we just saw that with Alcee Hastings.
This is not a joke. Like, they actually believe, we know this, that they are entitled to choose their successor. Like it's some sort of monarchy. And how dare you? You're not waiting your turn. There were people in line for that seat. I can't stand that. I can't even begin to tell you.
And again, that's impeding progress in the most clearest way
we feel
possible.
you.
Well, one of the things that at my launch back in January, because I did recognize, because I'm running against a 30-year incumbent, I need to establish name recognition and that. So we got an early start, right? But at my launch, there was a reporter there, and he came to me with that. So how do you feel about the fact that, Delegate Norton is like a beloved grandmother, in this community, and that you're going to be seen as coming against her? And I said, I respect her and I respect that sentiment. But we also ultimately know that it's up to the people to decide, and the people have earned the right to have an option and a choice. And that's who I'm taking my message to. I'm not asking permission. I'm not asking to be approved. I'm not asking to be signed off on. And so, yes, you alluded to, in the African-American community, there's sort of this level of respect. And so, yes, you're absolutely right. She's my elder, so you're not going to hear me tear her down. I was raised right. I'm not going to embarrass my family and be like that. But at the same time, I also was taught to speak and act upon my own agency and with my own voice, and not feel like I had to seek approval from anyone else other than God and myself in terms of what was the plan for my life. And so when I arrived at the decision to run for this position back in June, when I first thought about it, I didn't file till December, but by June I had made the decision. I knew it was bigger than me. And at the end of the day, like you all said, you have to remember that when you're doing something like this, it has to be for a reason that's deeper than just running.
Yeah.
Well, you certainly have an advantage running in a very urban area. There is a lot of ground that you can make up in terms of knocking on doors.
Yeah.
I still think meeting people face to face is a huge advantage when you're trying to unseat a long-term incumbent, whether it's on the first try or potentially second try. But the point is, I'm curious, and this is where we'll kind of wind down the conversation. Okay. Number one, what do you believe, and to this point, as of right now, separates you from the current representative? And what have you learned from your experience working with Andrew Yang and the Yang Gang that you feel is going to have long-term benefits in whatever road that might take you, as well as this Humanity Forward movement?
So to your first question, I think what sets me apart from the incumbent is that I have a vision for DC that goes even beyond statehood. One of the things that we found is that the whole conversation around politics, if you're going to run for any office here in the District of Columbia, that statehood has to be almost your only plank issue and nothing else is lifted up. But I've never believed that we were a one-dimensional city. And I also don't believe we can look at statehood and beyond. I'm running on a progressive platform of universal basic income, universal healthcare, all the things that we can make a reality when we get statehood. But until we cross that path, we don't have to put those things on hold. We can multitask. We've never been a one-dimensional city. And so I'm endeavoring as the candidate to move the conversation and the electorate beyond just statehood, because what it's showing, and this kind of goes into the second question that you asked, and what I hope to leave as a legacy in this race. I want to win, but I also want to, I want to leave a legacy in that as much as statehood is a very popular and emotional issue, it's not playing out in the data. And so for me, you can't be around Andrew Yang and be on his campaign and not pay attention to data. He's the data of the math guy.
Yes, he is.
Yes, he is.
And in 2018, the previous primary, we don't look at 2020. That's kind of outlier because of, Trump and all of that. Sure. Previous primary 2018, turnout in this city, 493,000 likely voters, 89,000 turned out, 18%. It's incredibly low. We know midterms are typically low anyway, very, very low.
Yeah.
Why is the electorate not excited? We're highly registered. You go to our 8 wards where we got high registration numbers, but they're not coming out. So I'm talking to people on the street and I'm like, what's going on? What do you need? They said, we have no representation. They go over to Washington. They don't come over and find out what's happening with us. Statehood sounds good, but how's statehood going to put groceries on my table? How's statehood going to help me pay my bills and help me make the connection, and then maybe I'll get excited about coming out.
Yeah.
So that's what we're doing, is trying to restart the hope in this city so that people will turn out.
I don't think we could have ended on a more positive note. That is exceptionally well said. But making DC a state may sound good, but it ain't going to put food on my table. And that, especially for a significant portion of people who live in our nation's capital, there are much more pressing issues than that. Reverend Hamilton, thank you so much. Website so everyone can find you and support you.
RevWendyForCongress.com.
FOR?
FOR, yes.
Okay.
RevWendyForCongress.com. Please check me out.
Hey guys,
check out the policy page. That'd be great.
Absolutely recommend that everybody go check out the Reverend. She is a lovely lady and has wonderful ideas. We need to continue to move the needle forward, and that's what Humanity Forward is all about. We appreciate you coming on. We hope to see you soon.
Appreciate you both. Thank you, Jen. Thank you. Bye. Bye-bye.
So needless to say, these are the types of things that I look at and think, yeah, this should get people excited. This isn't about the same old.
And what is interesting is the truth is, whenever I do think about DC, all I think about is the statehood issue. That's the only thing that anyone talks about. But I also understand why DC residents would be somewhat defeatist about participating in electoral politics when they know that their representative doesn't get a vote.
That's true.
So it's like, I understand. I mean, it's pathetic enough when you just have a representative that stinks, but then have a representative that kind of stinks and doesn't have a vote. It's a little defeatist.
Well, and again, you know, you're talking about the archaic nature of the way that a lot of people that have been on the Hill for a long time think. And for those of you who don't know, and again, we're not going to get into the mud on this issue, but we did ask Representative Norton to come on the show to talk about DC statehood. And she said, and I quote, "I am not speaking to anyone who ran against Debbie Wasserman Schultz." So, okay, if that's how you want to treat it, then fine.
This is the problem with that. This is the problem with that. Well, one, I'm not a candidate. Like currently a candidate. That's what that
probably more than anything else. I was
it's annoying.
That doesn't make sense.
But what's so frustrating about it, okay, so think about this, people. This is a congressional representative whose job is to represent people and advocate for people. She was invited to go onto a platform to talk about her initiative for DC statehood, her legislation. And because of her relationship with a sitting congressperson, she won't go on a platform with somebody who previously ran against her, you know, like in a democracy.
Well, that's why George.
It's like this personal. It's
again,
ridiculous.
It's as George Carlin said, it's a big club and you ain't in it. And the ones who are in it protect it like it's a fortress. That's basically, and you know, no pun intended, but after what happened on January 6th, it's going to be a fortress now.
You know what,
They're going to treat it like that.
I feel like when I look at somebody like Representative Norton, that I just think it's a shame that the representative for DC doesn't that puts her personal feelings about a particular person ahead of what's in the best interest of her constituents. And that's really sad to me. And it's sad for the people of DC.
When you were running for Congress, I ran into Chris King in Orlando. And you know, I asked him, you know, would you consider giving Jen a look? You know, you're very much against, you know, big sugar, and you know, you have a lot of progressive ideas. And you're like, I'm sorry, man, I'm friends with Debbie. And I'm just like, okay, maybe you're friends with her on a personal level, but on a professional level, I think you guys kind of disagree on a lot of major issues here. And there is this lack of understanding that you really have to be able to separate the personal from the professional. And that is something that I think is lost on a lot of people. You know, you can have a relationship on a personal level with somebody like some of my very good friends who are hardcore MAGA Trump supporters. On a personal level, I can get along with them. I can vehemently disagree with them. But if they ran for office and somebody who ran against them was somebody who shared my values and my ideas, I'm going to support that person.
Of course.
Like, that's what you're supposed to do.
It is. But it's ironic that the people that are involved in the electoral process don't really believe in democracy.
But that's
what's democracy?
But I think that is the lesson, as much as anything, that we are learning from Humanity Forward, from Andrew Yang's movement that he has started, is this idea that I don't want to hear about what coalition you're in or this or that. I want to talk about the issues at bar that are most important to us and that we are fighting for. Because if we are going to fight for them, we must cross-pollinate. It is absolutely necessary.
Cross-pollinate.
Well,
Speaking of cross-pollinating. Thanks for watching. If you want to support our mission to transform politics into service, please like this video, subscribe, follow us on social media, and consider joining our Patreon, where you'll get early access to our interviews as well as other exclusive content. Links are in the description. Peace out.